Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I have not filmed a video over here in over a month, you guys. It seems like it's been forever. And for those of you that watch my Peter Monn channel, you know that I did a little bit of a life update over there about a week ago. I've been out, I've been sick. I was diagnosed with acute pancreatitis, which was a result of my epilepsy medicine. So they had to change my epilepsy medicine. It's been a long road. And I was having extreme pain as a result of the acute pancreatitis. And that's what I want to talk about today. In my update video that I did, you know, I talk a lot about addiction and recovery over here. It's one of the things I'm the most passionate about talking about, especially since I've been sober for 28 years. I mean, it is my life. Addiction and recovery and sobriety is my life. I mean, most of my friends are sober, and it's the language that I speak. And, you know, when you've had something be a part of your life for 28 years, and, you know, also it was the last 13 years of my mother's life, and so she and I spoke that language, and then my best friend and I are sober together. It's like, you know, so much of my life is about addiction and recovery and sobriety. You know, my sponsor and everything, you know, it's just like, it's hard to kind of like not have that be your life. And so you guys know that I'm really passionate about talking about it. When I did my life update video, I mentioned in there, I said, and I just kind of, I think I said it for like a minute, but I said one of the frustrating things was, and I wasn't really sure where to put this video. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it on my main channel or my Peter Does Stuff channel, but since I've kind of devoted some videos over here talking about recovery, I thought I'm going to talk about it over here because I think that this is a really important topic, and this is something that, in all honesty, I really never thought I would talk about on a video. I mean, not recently. I knew that I needed to talk about, but let's say 6 months ago, I didn't think I would talk about, you know, this kind of thing on a video or whatever. But I think it's really important to talk about. I've lost many friends of mine this way, and what happened to me was no joke. And so I feel very passionate that I need to talk about this. I mentioned in my video, my update video, that what I constantly find in going to doctors and going to nurses, and I think but most of you know that in the last year and a half, I've had to go to see a lot of different doctors for a lot of different reasons, is that they aren't highly educated when it comes to addiction and recovery, and they don't speak the language of recovery. And in fact, I had a couple nurses mention on my video, they said like, well, what would you suggest? And, you know, things I would suggest is, you know, pick up the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous and read it. There's 164 pages in the AA text, and I think 200 pages in the NA text that you'd have to read. You know, you could read it over a weekend. That would make you more versed in recovery language and what it's like to be an addict or an alcoholic. You know, I think also attending open meetings. Open meetings are for anybody to come to. So they're 12-step meetings. Closed meetings are for addicts or alcoholics only, but open meetings are for anybody. And you can go there and you can listen to people. There are also, you can put in on YouTube, you know, NA leads, AA leads, and you can find people's telling their stories online, Al-Anon leads, Cocaine Anonymous leads, Heroin Anonymous leads, anything, you know, and you can hear people's stories and share their stories. And the more that I think we share our stories and the more that people understand what we go through and what that's like, the better people are equipped to be compassionate and to understand what that's like for an alcoholic or an addict. It is frustrating to have to explain to somebody every single time that you're coming face to face. And like when you're in the hospital, you know, when you have 2 nurse changes a day, 2 technician changes a day, seeing several, I mean, every day I saw a different doctor, you know, and then you have to explain to them this, that, and the other, your fears associated, because fear is a huge part of addiction, right? And then you have to explain, like when they're wanting to up your meds, your pain, well, the pain medication isn't working, let's just double it. I'm like, no. Like, this is very scary to me. This is how, well, why is it scary to you? You don't understand. It's perfectly safe. Okay, I understand that you're saying it's perfectly safe, whatever. So I want to share with you guys what happened. So when I went when I went into the inpatient hospital, when I went into the ER, they admitted me into inpatient because they wanted to control the pain by IV pain medication. And then they also wanted to be able to monitor what was going on. And that was ultimately how they found out, because every scan they did, every blood test they did, everything was coming back normal, which is great. I'm in pretty good health. But what they were finding was there was no reason for the acute pancreatitis. What they ultimately found out was that it was a result of my Depakote, which I think it's like 2 in 1,000 people get pancreatitis from Depakote, which my GI specialist told me that 2 out of 1,000 from a medical point of view is actually kind of a high number, right? So that was a lot of why I was in the hospital too, so that they could change my medications over and get me stabilized. When they released me, I was still in extraordinary pain, like I was in a lot of pain. And so they released me on pretty high doses of pain medication, of which I was terrified about. And I was really resistant to it, but I also knew that I couldn't live at home without pain medication. Like, there was no way that I either had to stay in the hospital, which they were not asking me to stay in the hospital. I mean, they were like, no, we're going to send you home with pain medication, which is interesting because my GI specialist, when I went to go see him, which was a referral, he told me he would have kept me in the hospital for 2 weeks and not released me on pain medication because this is how people get hooked. He was the only doctor that actually knew what he was talking about with pain medication. He's like, this is how people get hooked on pain medication because the pain for acute pancreatitis can linger depending on the person. It can be 3 to 4 days. I just went to my neurologist today. I was telling him that I'm still kind of nauseous, and he goes, Peter, this could be lingering effects of the pancreatitis. It can go on 4 weeks. It can go on 3 months. He said, for each person, it's completely different. And so, I mean, I feel pretty good, but I'm still nauseous a lot. And so, so depending on each person, so he was like, the GI specialist said, I would never have released you if you were in that kind of extraordinary pain where I couldn't sleep, I couldn't walk. I mean, it was horrible, right? And so they released me on this high dose of pain medication, which I had to talk to my sponsor about. My husband had to dole out to me. I mean, it was all of this, right? Which is what I go through because I'm so terrified of getting hooked on pain medication. Now, just to put this in perspective for you, I have had friends of mine that have had horrible, realistic chronic diseases and back pain that they have been diagnosed with and had to go and be prescribed high doses of pain medication. And even still being involved in 12-step programs, they start, like, after a while, kind of like going away, not going to meetings. They become very dependent on the pain medication. And then, you know, the doctors will double their doses because it's not hitting the pain, which was happening with me. And then all of a sudden, 2 years down the road, they're not going to meetings. They don't have relationships with people in recovery anymore. They don't have a sponsor. They're not working steps, and they're on triple doses of pain medication, and they're basically at home and they're hooked. I've had a lot of friends of mine that have died of overdoses on pain medication. Okay? So let me tell you how scary it is when every doctor in the hospital, every nurse in the hospital, and every nurse practitioner that I saw and doctor when I got out, other than my neurologist and the GI specialist, told me that the pain medication that they put me on had no withdrawal symptoms. They all told me that, and that was my biggest fear, was how am I going to get off of this stuff, and are they going to taper me, which they did, and whatever. I want to tell you, I have never been through a worse hell in my entire life. I went through 5 to 7 days of withdrawals coming off of this pain medication because finally I was like, I cannot be on this anymore. Like, you've got to take me off of this. I went to my home group in recovery and I like spilled my guts. I was like bawling and I was like, I can't do this anymore and I'm scared I'm going to die and blah, blah, blah. And you know, and it was so great because all of my friends, I mean, I have friends of mine that have been sober for 30, 40 years and, you know, 50 years. And they were all like, as alcoholics and addicts, we do not have to be in pain, but we also don't have to be afraid to get hooked on pain medication. Like, it can be stabilized for us. We can be weaned off of it. And so I went to the meeting and I came home and I was like, I'm done. Like, they're going to have to wean me off of that. And that was when I called my doctor and she was like, are you really sure? I mean, she was even kind of resistant to weaning me off the medication because of the pain. And I was like, yeah, like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I have to be off of that. And to be honest with you, even when I go to doctors and I tell them that I'm an addict and I can't take anything habit forming, and just so y'all know, like, I don't take even Benadryl over the counter. Like, I don't take, Tylenol is it for me. Like, I don't take anything that makes you feel funky, that makes you feel weird. I don't even like to drink too many Red Bulls, okay? And maybe 3 cups of coffee might be too much for me. So you got me on pain medication, and I feel all kinds of flipping out, right? But it is taking the pain away, which is fantastic. But then the flip side of that is I'm terrified that I'm going to be hooked on this stuff, and every doctor out there wants to double my dose and is resistant to weaning me off of it and is telling me there's nothing wrong. I can tell you right now, I could walk into any hospital and I could sit there and I could tell the nurse or the doctor, I am 28 years sober, I cannot take anything habit forming, and they'd say, how many Oxycontin do you want? They would say that to me. Honest to God, you guys, honest to God. Like, the whole medical field is just so ignorant when it comes to addiction and recovery, and that people are so highly susceptible to this. And the thing that is so scary is that I've always been a believer that as far as addiction, I believe that I am genetically predisposed to be an addict and an alcoholic. I believe I was born an addict and an alcoholic. I believe it's in my genes. I believe it goes back in my family generation after generation after generation, okay? My grandfather was a bartender. He died at 39 from lung cancer, from smoking 5 packs of cigarettes a day. You know, I mean, I have it in my blood on both sides of my family. But I also believe that it can be a learned situation as well. And I believe that in our country right now, we have so many people that are becoming medical addicts. And what I mean by that is that they are being prescribed high doses. And I just watched that show Dope Sick while I was going through withdrawals, which was probably the worst show to watch because it terrified me. But you know, this whole Purdue Pharma, the pharmaceutical company, was telling people, well, if the pain isn't being hit, double their dose, triple their dose. And you know, you have somebody out there that doesn't have a history of 28 years of sobriety, that just wants the pain to be gone from their body, and they just want to feel good again, because that's all I wanted, was to feel good, right? But I also had the knowledge of what I had gone through in the past and what friends of mine had gone through and the fear of that, and I was like, no, that's not going to happen to me. But you take a lay person out there that hasn't gone through that and is like having doctors push anything they possibly can on them. That is terrifying. And that is why people are losing people left and right today. And so I beg you, if you are in the medical field, and I don't care what that means. I don't care if that means that you work as, you know, a receptionist at a doctor's office. I don't care if that means that, you know, you work as a janitor at the hospital. Please educate yourself on addiction and recovery. Please make it your point to know, you know, that there are people out there that we only survive by not having these substances. And the thing is like my friends that said to me, there's no reason why alcoholics and addicts have to be in pain. Like, we can take pain medication. Like, for years, I've never had my wisdom teeth taken out, even though my dentist is like highly recommending it. But you know, I've always heard people say, like, if you have to take Vicodin to get your wisdom teeth taken out, you can take it, but you just have like your husband or your wife or your parents or whatever dole them out to you. And when you don't need them anymore, you flush it down the toilet. You get rid of it, right? Like, that's what we do in recovery. But it's so scary when you're going through it. And then you're talking to the doctors and you're telling the doctors, like, I'm scared to get hooked on this. And they're saying, I can't tell you. I mean, I must have had 4 or 5 doctors tell me there's no withdrawal symptoms. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you can read studies on this stuff. People are dying of overdoses on this stuff. And I'm terrified of it, you know? Even though I'm talking to my sponsor every day and I'm bawling my eyes out to her because I didn't want to be in pain, but I didn't know what else to do. And it terrifies me for people. And so I'm so thankful that I was able to go through it. But when I tell you that the withdrawal symptoms were hell, I mean to tell you, I was vomiting, I felt weak, I couldn't sleep, I felt like I was coming out of my skin. So for any doctor or nurse out there that tells somebody that pain medication does not have symptoms, withdrawal symptoms to it, or is habit forming, how dare you? How dare you tell somebody that? It was horrible. The pain that I went through coming off the pain medication was almost as horrible as the pain that I had from the acute pancreatitis. And I don't wish anybody that whatsoever. I would have preferred to have stayed in the hospital for another week and not be released on any pain medication whatsoever, and been told when I got home, you're going to have a limited amount of pain, and take Tylenol or whatever they would have recommended, or hydrate yourself, and other than get up, move around, other than have somebody put me on all these medications, and anytime I call them to ask them for help, they want to double the dose. Which, thank God I didn't let that happen, because I was like so terrified that after the first time I was like, no, we're not, like, we're done. Like, that was when I went to my meeting. My friend Tanya was like, we're going to a meeting. And I went to my meeting and I bawled my eyes out and I told it myself, and that's what I've always done in recovery. I've always been taught, you tell yourself, you tell what's going on with you. You tell your truth. And when you tell your truth, you have nothing to hide from. And I was so thankful that I had my friends that just enveloped me in love that night and said, what you're going through is what millions of people go through, but you don't have to, see, because you don't have to suffer like this anymore. And you can tell your doctors enough is enough. And that's what I did the next day. And I was like, I've got to wean myself off of this, And for any of you out there that are suffering from this, I was on it for 3.5 weeks, and part of it was when I was in the hospital. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be hooked on this medically for years and years and years, and also have chronic pain and not know how you're going to get off of it. But I will tell you, and I have good friends of mine that specialize in non-narcotic pain, non-narcotic pain specialists, that there are ways to deal with this that you don't have to be hooked on narcotics, And I know it doesn't seem great because you have to deal with some of the pain and there are other things that you have to do, but, they're geniuses in their fields as well. So I don't know. I wanted to share my story because I think more than anything, the ignorance of a doctor or a nurse telling somebody there are no withdrawal symptoms coming off pain medication, when I suffered greatly coming off pain medication, and it was terrifying for me, and I was crying to my husband, and I was crying to my best friend and my sponsor and my friends that are in recovery, and I was saying, like, I just don't think I can do it. Here's the thing that's so scary to me. If I didn't have the support system that I had that was telling me that I could get through this and I was going to do this, if I didn't have a sponsor that had been a retired nurse, if I didn't have a husband that was so fantastic, to sit there and be patient with me, if I didn't have 2 doctors that actually knew what they were talking about, if I just had doctors that were out there that were continuing to double and triple doses and push medication on me, I don't know, like, in a different world that I would ever have come off of this stuff, because it is so highly addicting and it is so crazy. It's so terrifying. And I've talked about this in a lot of videos. One of my greatest fears is being hooked on painkillers and never coming back out of this again. And I'm so grateful for the history that I have in recovery and my friends and my support network. And most of all, I think that I'm so grateful, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but the pride that I have in my sobriety and the realization that everything that I have in my life today, from my marriage to YouTube, to my house, to my dog, to my friends, everything, all the relationships that I have in my life today, my relationship with my dad and my stepmom or my cousin and all my friends, everything that I have in my life today is a direct result of my sobriety. And if I don't have my sobriety, I don't have any of that, which is when I prioritize things in my life. My sobriety always has to come first. And I'm so thankful that that was one of the very first things that I was taught in recovery, because I've always prioritized my recovery and put it first. And as a result of that, I was able to have enough pride in my sobriety and my recovery to stand up for myself and say enough is enough. Because if I didn't have that, I just don't know what would happen. And I'm so fearful for those people out there that are in chronic pain, that don't have any other solution, and have doctors just feeding this. It's a really, really scary thing. And so I feel for you out there if you're going through that. And I just wanted to share with you guys what I have been going through lately. And tomorrow I will hopefully be back with a meditation video that will be a little bit more lighthearted. And I love you guys, and I'll see you then. Bye.